High Society is kind of a silly movie. It came out in 1956, and it's a remake of The Philadelphia Story, a huge classic and major success from only 16 years earlier. The only changes are added color and musical numbers, a la White Christmas updating Holiday Inn. Despite the fact that virtually every critic will say this is a worse movie than its predecessor, I will always choose High Society over Philadelphia Story, and for one reason. I love Grace Kelly. She is my phone background. She is my computer background. I own 2 books about her. I own 2 movie posters that include her face. Grace Kelly is one of my favorite actresses, but over the decades, her legacy as an actress has faded, and she's more just a great name to put in a pop song. Other actresses of her era, Marilyn, Audrey, Judy, are all household names with a few movies people could probably list, and recognizable voices easy to imitate in impressions. I don't think people even trying to do a Grace Kelly impression know what they're looking for. Grace Kelly, however, was a star of astronomical proportions in the 1950s. She burst onto Hollywood in 1952 and within 2 years won the Oscar for Best Actress, and was one of the highest-grossing stars in the industry. She epitomized the contemporary ideal of femininity, balancing elegance and charm with intelligence and wit. Women wanted to be her, and men twice her age wanted to be in movies with her. I've read Robert Lacey's biography of Kelly, which, to be honest, is pretty dated. It was written in the 90s, so it has this very rigid idea of gender roles and expression, but nonetheless is very informative regarding people's perception of who she was and what she represented. Lacey's book posits that she's not really that great of a transformative actress, but where she excels is at playing the fantasy of herself. Kelly was from a nouveau riche Irish-German family and was known in her early life for her nasally, thick Philly accent. She was Catholic in a world where the high society debutantes of Philadelphia were thoroughbred wasps. And yet, with a little bit of AMDA vocal training, she learned how to conjure up an image of ethereal, graceful beauty, to the point where her celebrity identity is more recognizable than any character she's played. She has a very limited filmography, but you can see her begin to blossom when the roles adhere more to who we think Grace Kelly is: stylish, sophisticated, and wealthy. What were considered the better performances at the time, particularly her Oscar-winning role in The Country Girl, now read as incredibly boring and dated compared with movies like Rear Window and To Catch a Thief. No one wants to see Grace Kelly be dowdy and depressed. She's not fooling anyone in a lumpy sweater set and glasses. We want to see her twirl in a dress, and I'm not being patronizing. I've literally never seen anyone be more compelling in a good outfit. High Society is her last film before she was married to Prince Rainier of Monaco and retired from acting to become a princess. It's compelling, then, not only as a Grace Kelly movie, but also as a vehicle to both examine her movie star persona and bid farewell to the brief princess of Hollywood. The plot is virtually identical to Philadelphia Story. A young woman, Tracy Lord, is about to marry for the second time. She's a wealthy heiress, and she's thought of as perfect by everyone, to a fault. Tracy is cold, judgmental, and very prim. This performance of perfection is what ended her first marriage with her ex-husband/neighbor Dexter, played by Bing Crosby. Reporters from a tabloid magazine used potentially scandalous information about Tracy's distant father to leverage themselves into getting coverage of her wedding, and they send reporter Mike, played by Frank Sinatra, along with a photographer played by Celeste Holm. Hijinks ensue, including a ruse that confuses Tracy's father and Tracy's uncle. I'm not gonna lie, the first half of this movie is kind of boring. Everyone's just sort of puttering around, arriving at the house for the wedding, running into each other. The man Tracy is going to marry, George, is not really a character. I had to Google his name twice. I don't find the nosy sister at all charming, and I gotta be honest, I hate Bing Crosby. The songs in the first half are also not showstoppers. I'm a huge Cole Porter fan, and these are not his best. The stage adaptation of the movie adds more famous, catchier songs of his, like Let's Misbehave, to just beef up the soundtrack. It's not awful. There are some moments that make me laugh. But it's still pretty conventional. I had paid to rent this movie, and 30 minutes in was ready to eat my $4 and move on. But then, something magic happens. Everyone gets drunk. Once the party starts literally, the party starts theatrically. They've pretty much given up on the paper-thin "we're tricking the reporters" plan, which, to be honest, no one ever seemed that committed to, and it becomes more about Tracy's desires and her complicated feelings about other people's perception of her. She knows she's cold. To some extent, she likes being icy and perfect, but she doesn't like how that makes people keep their distance from her. She wants others to live up to her ideal, not have to lower herself to make them comfortable. This pairs well with Grace Kelly's real-life public persona. People found her cold and bitchy. She was too perfect, too poised. People close to her in real life also seem to notice contrasting personalities in Grace. One moment bubbly, giggly, and sweet, the next cold and distant. With men, she had the capacity to be very forward and sexually outgoing, while also retaining a strong instinct to retreat into herself and shut off any unwanted feelings. Once everyone gets drunk, they begin to have fun. Dexter and Mike bond, Tracy and Mike dance, the sexual tension skyrockets. Tracy allows herself to flirt, play around, and soon realizes that she has the capacity to be silly, goofy, and fun. She doesn't have to worry about finding someone perfect because she's not perfect. She's actually kind of a mess. Embracing the warmer side of her being, she realizes she doesn't want to marry George and feels free to remarry Dexter. Grace Kelly, wearing her real-life engagement ring from the Prince of Monaco, gets to get blackout drunk and almost have sex with Frank Sinatra. These are some of my favorite scenes in her entire filmography. Nowhere is she funnier, more charming, more delightful, or more beautiful. It doesn't hurt that Helen Rose's costume designs are absolutely stunning. Edith Head can make her look incredibly stylish and sophisticated, but Helen Rose can make her look pretty beyond imagination. She would go on to design Grace's real-life wedding dress. In a perfect world, I want that dress for my ceremony, but Tracy Lord's wedding dress for my reception. Grace Kelly is something of a paradox when it comes to female representation. She came of age in this very weird gray zone, post-war and pre-second wave feminism. As a child of a wealthy family, she enjoyed a lot of freedom in her education and in her career, which many would consider aspirational. She went to school, she owned her own apartment. Having the resources to support herself, she also didn't have to take any shit from the studios. If MGM wanted to give her bad roles as underwritten girlfriends, she didn't have to take them. The control she maintained over her career is admirable. In her later years, the retired actress allegedly complained of not understanding the goals of feminism, which strikes both me and Robert Lacey as hypocritical. The Park Avenue socialite type, a woman with the agency to her own apartment and career, with the ability to date multiple men and only marry the one she liked, was a fantasy of privilege and power that was not afforded to most women of the 1950s. Only a select few, basically Grace Kelly and Barbie. But seeing a few women do it, even wealthy white women, certainly didn't hurt, and might have even inspired other women to fight for what they wanted. It's elitist and out of touch for Kelly not to recognize that. The worst moment in high society by far is not the corny jokes or the less catchy songs, but it's when Tracy drives Mike out to look at all the mansions no longer occupied by fabulously wealthy people. The scene exists to show Mike that rich people have problems too. Not the emotional, sexual problems that our main character is dealing with, but literal financial problems, like not having enough mansions. It exists in Philadelphia story too, and it strikes me as egregiously tone-deaf, coming out a few years after the Great Depression, and even more ridiculous that they decided to keep it in for the remake. This gets at the heart of what's both complicated and compelling to me about Grace Kelly. She's beautiful, elegant, and poised, but that's not all there is to her. She had a contentious relationship with her father, which led to a contentious relationship with her husband. She is both a model of empowerment and a detractor of feminism. She's a little bit like her character in To Catch a Thief, a child of new money dressed head to toe in couture, ashamed of her mother's obvious working-class background. An Irish Catholic girl pretending to be a WASP. High society, to me, seems to know this. Tracy is beautiful and lovely, but there's a sadness and loneliness to her that's honest and a little heartbreaking. She doesn't know how to reconcile the parts of herself that are contradictory. She doesn't know how to be a model socialite and an adventurous spirit. She doesn't know how to not be her father and still be herself. In Judith Thurman's introduction to a Colette anthology, she says that what makes Colette's writing and her characters especially compelling are the paradoxes. The paradoxes of great literature are those of human nature, and Colette is nothing if not human. Accessible and elusive, greedy and austere, courageous and timid, subversive and complacent. These are the qualities of the artist and the woman. So too, I think it applies to Grace Kelly. We see her not just as one label, like Brassy Girl Friday or Sweet Ingenue, but as a complicated personality wrestling with her discomfort about her identity, a giggly, creative spirit that grew up in a rigid household that didn't appreciate her. A flirty, outgoing woman who enjoyed casual sexual relationships, coming of age in an era with very strict views on how women were supposed to behave. A girl from Philly pretending to be French. In real life, Grace Kelly doesn't get to reconcile any of these contradictions. Very few of us.
The wedding is over, and Prince Rainier's bride is no longer Grace Kelly, but Her Serene Highness Princess Grace of Monaco.
Very few of us are ever able to have the kind of epiphany Tracy Lord gets to have. That's why this movie is such a delight for me. It's really something for a movie to basically be about a movie star's persona, and not only explore it, but have its star be in on the joke. As Robert Lacey puts it, at the very last moment, Hollywood discovered that the Ice Maiden could laugh at herself. Grace played a girl falling off her pedestal and enjoying every minute of it. Though her Tracy Lord was a divorcee who gets so drunk she imagines the next morning she's been to bed with a stranger, Grace managed to float above such sordid details with the cheeriness and uplift of a Sunday school teacher. It was the final twirl of the paradoxical Grace Kelly magic. Grace was light and witty and scintillating, and her most moving achievement was to depict the state of being in love in all of its mad sentiment and folly, while also transmitting the deeper sense of destiny and purpose that is the eternal but elusive promise of true love. Thank you for watching.
But to give to you and to give to me love.